Great. So I'm going to welcome everybody to our June program for Mainline Mufon. So nice to see you all. I'd like to invite you all to mute right now if you haven't already. That makes it easier for me that I don't have to go through the list and find everyone and mute them. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you and tell you a little bit about Richard. Richard and I have been friends for, 5 or 6 or 8 or 9 years now. I can't quite remember. I met Richard because he happens to be a good friend of Travis Walton's. And he has had a lifelong interest in petroglyphs because he's lived in Arizona where he's seen a lot of them since he was a very young child. So let me read his introduction for you, and then we'll turn the program over to Richard. Richard Gonsalves will be talking about the emerging stories he has found in petroglyphs in the American Southwest, mainly in Arizona and New Mexico. And Richard, as I mentioned, grew up in Snowflake and has been lifelong friends with Travis and Mike Rogers. Richard is now the president of an archaeological group in Arizona called the Agave House chapter of the Arizona Archaeological Society. And that's in the area where Travis had his event. It's called Heber Overgaard. And that's right where the Mogollon Rim is, which sits about 7,000 feet high. It's a magnificently beautiful area if you've never come to Arizona. So Richard is not a trained official, academic archaeologist, but he's become an archaeologist because of his unique ability to see petroglyphs in a very different way. This has led him to make some discoveries. He is partnered up with an author and researcher named John Rushcamp Jr., who lives in Chicago and has written a fascinating book called the Asiatic
Echoes.
Asiatic Echoes. Thank you. I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce that word because there's not an H in there. So I wasn't quite sure how it was pronounced. But this is a fascinating book because what it talks about is the fact that there were ancient Chinese mariners that probably came up to the West Coast and made their way inland and traveled around in the ancient past and left petroglyphs behind because John and Richard have discovered that many of these things are actually ancient Chinese script in the petroglyphs that must date back at least 3,000 years ago. And this is just kind of now coming to light. And it's also when the Chinese were learning to write and their language wasn't quite as codified as it is today. So I had the pleasure through Richard of stopping and meeting John Rushcamp in his home in Chicago where he lives. And it was absolutely fascinating to go into his library and listen. And we spoke for probably 3 or 4 hours about what's not known about the ancient part of our country. So Richard is going to be talking also about calendrical markers, and these are astronomical symbols that line up at certain times of the year, just like we're coming up to with the solstice. And the native culture have found many of these petroglyphs and also made some of them. So without further ado, you're going to hear a really fascinating program tonight from Richard Gonsalves, and everybody's giving you a clap. It's a silent clap, but they're giving you a clap. And we will turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for that fantastic introduction. That was a little more than I expected. Behind me here is the canyon just outside of Snowflake. And a lot of the petroglyphs I'm going to be talking about are inside this canyon. A lot of them are right here. There's some over here and on down around the corners. I grew up in Snowflake and I was familiar with petroglyphs my whole life. I was into photography and was concerned about graffiti, vandalism, and theft. I wanted to preserve the petroglyphs, so I started photographing them. My presentation will include calendrical and astronomical finds, culture and legends, and connections to the Aztec and the Chinese. What are petroglyphs and why were they made? Some petroglyphs depict anthropomorphs, zoomorphs, geometric shapes and patterns, These are people and animals. Some petroglyphs are calendrical markers or astronomical objects, calendars and stars. Cultural depictions, cultures interact by sharing, borrowing, and exchanging ideas in both directions. Some petroglyphs are total mysteries, and a very few are ancient Chinese, around 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Petroglyph panels. Some panels have prehistoric images dating back hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of years. Some panels have historic images from around 1650 through modern day, such as horses and trains. I'm not going to be talking about those. I'm only interested in the ancient ones. Some panels are mixtures of images from different ages, different people, different cultures, all mixed together on the same panel. My talk may seem disjointed because the panels are a mixture. My talk is not geared for an archaeologist or a historian. It's geared for the layperson. I'm not an archaeologist, so I can say what I want. My talk will mainly be about petroglyphs I have personally found or helped find. Petroglyphs are a mystery, and I will be offering one explanation out of many possibilities. Can we date a petroglyph, and if so, how? Weathering. Different rock types weather at different rates. Sandstone weathers faster than granite or volcanic rock. Exposure to the sun, wind, and water. Protected rocks erode slower than exposed rocks. Desert varnish. It takes thousands of years to form, but it depends on many factors: weather, water, wind, and exposure. Surrounding features and images may hint at a date, but that might not be accurate. Now, this is a petroglyph showing weathering. You see some bright, beautiful petroglyphs here, but do you see something hidden right here and here, over here, and even down through the middle of this one? Did you see those? They're so old, they almost disappeared. Here is some desert varnish. On the left side, I enhanced it so you could see what it looks like, or did look like. And on the right side, you can see that the repatination has totally wiped out some of the petroglyphs. They're almost like they were back to before anything was there. This is John Rushkamp and his wife, Linda. Roxanne Knight and myself. I took them out looking at petroglyphs. This panel in the background, I'll talk about it later, but that's one of the most fascinating petroglyphs that I'm going to be talking about. John Rushkamp wrote a book called Asiatic Echoes, and you can buy his book. And if you do get one of his books, make sure you buy a newer copy, because I have some of my stuff in his book, but you won't find it in a used book. This is a chart that I made, and it's inside of John's newer book. It's also part of his web page. You can print out my chart. Just go to his web page, and you can go to any of these places right here and print out my chart. I also have a YouTube channel. You can look it up under my name, Richard Gonsalves. And I've got 27 or so videos now that you can watch. This is one that of the first ones I put on. It's John's talk. It's very dated right now, but it does give you a good background of what we're finding today. And now a little brief history of the Chinese writing. The writing is divided up into eras. How did the different eras come about? In the beginning, scribes could not always read each other's writing. It was great for job security, but not for preserving knowledge. A new emperor would gather the scribes and have them standardize and simplify the writing system, creating a new era. Then the scribes would be tasked with translating the old records into the new system, and then they would destroy the old records, thereby killing the old system. Now, these are some of the oracle bones that they've started finding in 1899. They still today have not translated all of them, and they are offering a reward if you can translate any of the script. And you can see some of the petroglyphs and close-ups of the script on the bones. Now, this is many different ways that different scribes wrote the word mother. Some of them are very similar, and some of them are very, very different. Well, here is a petroglyph on the left. John found this in the Mojave Desert in California. And I found the one on the right along the Tularosa River in New Mexico. This is the word mother in Chinese. It's lactating breasts. And you can see how similar these are, even down to there's a little feather on the side here. And the one I found has the little feather, but it's chipped out. It's a little hard to see. But how identical they are. They clearly mean something. It's not just an accident that came out in two different places, hundreds of miles away. The scribe that made these petroglyphs knew the elements of the script. You see, this guy has a little hat. Well, this guy's here, and here's the hat way up here. He knew it had to be there, it just didn't know where to put it. On this one, this little mark had to be there, but on the petroglyph, he put it down lower. It didn't really change the meaning, but different scribes wrote things differently. And it just shows you that they needed to standardize. Now, this is one that I find very interesting. If you can see the Chinese script over here, this is a hand with a line on the wrist. Well, this chicken scratch looking thing, chicken foot, is a hand. They drew just 3 fingers. It was very fast and easy to write instead of putting all 5. And here's the little mark on the bottom. This is where you put your finger on your wrist and you feel the pulse of your heart. And the sun, this is the symbol for sun. That means pulsations of the sun. So this is a description of what these 3 concentric circles are. The yellow D looking thing is the moon. The blue turquoise is the word period of time. And the 3 concentric circles are 3 10-day weeks. In other words, a lunar month. This is a description that they wrote down so you would know what a lunar month was. This is Wu. Look how identical the petroglyphs are. Could sound be a wavy line or a spiral or both? here in Snowflake, here's a wavy line and a spiral with a coyote. I think this is the sound of the coyote, the yip, 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 ow. Well, here's the exact same thing in the petrified forest with some coyotes. Over in Grapevine, here's a coyote howling at the moon. You see the wavy line, and it's not a spiral, but it encompasses the coyote. Sound as a spiral or a wavy line. Some of these are animal sounds. You do see a coyote and a spiral. Here's some more coyotes, a wavy line and a spiral. Here's a bird that is chirping. Down here is another wavy line with some coyotes. Here's a elk with a spiral. He's bugling. Here's another elk. You can see his big antlers, a wavy line. So the sounds can be wavy lines or spirals. Now this is in north of Tucson. I got this off the internet, but this means thunder, and here is a spiral coming out of it, reinforcing that this is a sound. Here is Aheyute. He's a Zuni god of war. He's got sparks in his hair, or stars. He's got his foot on earth. He's throwing lightning bolts at this pottery design, meaning rain clouds. And a big, fat, wavy line up in the sky, thunder. Down here is a guy beating on a drum. And there are two wavy lines underneath of him. These are the sounds of the drum beats. And there's two of them, meaning it's echoing. And so when I see this panel, I can just envision somebody sitting there beating on the drums, and it's echoing through the canyon. The one in the middle here is either a meteor or a UFO. It has a wavy line coming from it to a sonic boom, possibly. And then we have this bighorn sheep. He's got a spiral coming out of his rear end. Sound. And here is the Chinese that match him. This one up here, Lu, looks like an H on its side. Musical tone. This one is thunder with the spiral coming out of it. Two languages. Down here, these barbell looking things, again, is Lu, meaning music. I'll tell you, if you're close enough to hear a sound coming out of a bighorn sheep, man, that's the dinner bell ringing for me. Is this a Rosetta Stone? The Chinese script Lu, musical tone, and the Native American sound, a wavy line and a spiral. Two languages on the same stone, a Rosetta Stone. When did I become passionate about petroglyphs? Well, I was into photography, and I was interested in petroglyphs and their meanings. And I was concerned about graffiti, vandalism, and theft. So I started photographing the petroglyphs to preserve them. And then I took this picture, and I went home, and I tried to put it in my computer, but I was putting it in the wrong place. And I just couldn't figure out, why did I get it so wrong? How could I make such a mistake? And so I started going through my pictures, and I came up with this one. I didn't make a mistake. Here are two petroglyphs panels with basically the same elements on them. It has this geometric shape in both of them. It's got twin stars, twin stars, twin stars, twin stars on both panels. This one has a macaw on the left side. This other one has a macaw on the right side. And then there's this kind of a shotgun blast looking thing in the middle of both of them. When I first saw this, I thought, oh no, somebody's trying to vandalize this. No, this is original. This means the Milky Way. So this was my aha moment. This is where I got super excited. These panels, these pictures, they mean something. And so I started on a quest to figure out what some of these mean. You have twin stars. I found lots of petroglyphs with twin stars. What could twin stars mean? That was a puzzle that I looked at for over 20 years. I could not figure out why they made twin stars. Now here's the peck marks that I think are the Milky Way. There's several of them. It's not graffiti or a shotgun blast. This was put there by the original artists. They mean something. And to me, it means the Milky Way. Well, in 2020, we had the conjunction of planets. They called it the Christmas star. On December 8th, the two planets were quite a ways apart. And the closer they came down to the 21st, they got closer and closer until they overlapped each other. Well, I went back in time and was wondering, could that have happened in the past? Well, in 1226, I find Saturn and Jupiter on December 18th are side by side. And then December 26th, Venus moved up and joined Jupiter. So on the 18th and 8 days later, you had twin stars down here, and they ended up being twin stars up there. So this is what the Indians would have saw. Venus down by Saturn, and it moves up next to Jupiter. Now this happens close to the winter solstice, Christmas time. Well, here's what they drew. Venus was down by Saturn, and then it moved up 8 days later to be next to Jupiter. Now, this is something that you're going to have to figure out yourself. In 1226, how did they know that Saturn had a ring around it? In Snowflake, Arizona, in 1226, out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, the solar standstill is when it lasts for 8 days, 4 days before the solstice and 4 days after the solstice. For us, the 21st plus 4 days equal 25, 25th, Christmas Day. This is the first day that they could see the sun turn around and start going back. My whole life, I couldn't figure out why did they miss the solstice so far. Well, it's because with the naked eye, you can't see the movement for 8 days. And the twin stars were on these very important 8 days. And so they had a ceremony. And the macaws are not native to Arizona. They brought them in just for sacrificial purposes. Now here's a petroglyph that when I saw this, it just really excited me. Does anybody have an idea what it is? Can you see it? It is so faint, you can't make it out. Well, I enhanced it so you can see it. And when I saw that, I got super excited. I just jumped up and turned and looked over the horizon. And this is what my mind's eye saw. I saw the mountain with the sun climbing up the side of it. So this means Orion. Well, what does the rest of the panel look like? Well, here's the rest of the panel. I enhanced it so you can see it. Here's a woman giving birth. Well, let me go. A woman giving birth, a new beginning. There is the Milky Way right here. And then there is Orion. Orion dominates the winter sky. And then this E-looking thing means mountain in Chinese. And here's a Navajo rug made in the 1920s with the E's on it. This is called the Four Sacred Mountains. So the Indians used this E-looking thing to mean mountain. And if you look over the mountain, you see the sun. So I thought, if I go out there December 21st, I'll probably see the sun walking up the side of the mountain. Well, John Rushkamp got to looking around and he found this Chinese word, Shu, which means a yearly event, something that happens once a year, the winter solstice. Look how it's darkened in, even got a little bulge on the side here. It's darkened in. This is identical. I thought that maybe that Cinder Cone Mountain was a mountain that could have roots on it, meaning it is alive, or possibly grow, which both work out fine, but John's discovery of this Chinese symbol, word, is a little closer match. So I got my camper and we went out the night before the solstice and went to bed. We got up before sunrise. We went out and set up the time-lapse camera. And my grandson and I, Ramsey, we had time, so we started going exploring. Well, this is in the area. This is what we were able to watch and look at while we were waiting for the time-lapse camera to do its thing. This is a very exciting, fun place to be. One of my favorite places to go to. So this is what I got in the camera. And if you see, the sun walks right up the side of the mountain. That marks the winter solstice. Well, a couple of 100 yards away, I found this spiral. None of the archaeologists knew what it was, but I had a feeling that it might be something to do with the summer solstice. So again, I went out and set up my time-lapse camera. And this is what I got. A sun dagger goes right through the center of the spiral on the summer solstice, June 20th. It starts somewhere around 2 o'clock in the afternoon and ends somewhere around 3:30, 4 o'clock. Also in the same area, a few 100 yards away, is this little tiny rock wall. I was looking at this rock wall for years, 5, 10 years, I don't know. I just couldn't figure out why would the Indians build a little tiny rock wall? It's only about 1 foot high. Well, I finally had a speaker that told me that you need to look at rock cairns to see what they're stacking up. And some of them look like snakes or a quetzalcoatl. I think they painted this during their ceremonial times, and so it would stand out. But I kept looking at this for years, trying to figure out, could this be a building of some kind? No, it's an effigy, Quetzalcoatl. Here's another winter solstice markers that I found in December 22nd. None of the archaeologists know about this. Down at the bottom of the screen, you see a circle with a dot in it. That's the word Ra in Chinese, meaning the sun. And so I got up early in the morning before the sunrise, and I stood there and I watched the sun peek up through a little notch in the mountain. This marks the winter solstice. And none of the archaeologists know about it. Okay, moving on to Casa Malapais in Springerville, Arizona. There is some ruins up here on the side of the mountain. And if you look over in the horizon here, this is the Little Colorado River. And here's a kiva that if you look directly up over the mountain, the center of that kiva, you can see the cliff face and the Colorado River. If you follow that line, it goes through another Indian pueblo, the Hooper Pueblo, through the dead center of the kiva there, up to a sundagger. This is like 4 kilometers. How could they get such a straight line that goes over 4 kilometers away? It just, I mean, it baffles me that how they could put that in such a direct line. Well, that panel, the sundagger, the archaeologists in Springerville had no idea what it was. Well, this is the panel. The dagger lasts 3.5 hours on a summer solstice. This is a atlatl hilt or something. I don't really know what it is, but it is a prominent figure. Here are the twin gods of thunder and lightning. This one has a severed head in his left hand, which is part of the legend. Here is a spiral, and here's a little S with a doorway in it. And so this sundagger, as it comes through a little hole in the rock, it goes right into the handle of this hilt. It goes right through the center of the spiral, and it goes through the little doorway in this S. It then moves down into the right hand of the warrior. It looks like a sword. And this is what it looks like. It takes 3.5 hours for this. I took still pictures and animated them so that you can see what it looks like over a 3.5 hour time period. Well, the archaeologists didn't know about it. So in 2019, I led a group to the Hooper Ranch, and we observed this sundagger. They were all amazed. It's been there for years, but nobody knew about it. Now here's another interesting thing. Anybody have a guess of what this could be? I've heard sunflowers. I've heard all kinds of things. What I saw when I looked at this is a solar eclipse. You have a bright sun. You have 3 dark suns, a dim sun, and a bright sun. Well, the Chinese read from right to left, and so do the Indians. So I went back in time and I found a total solar eclipse went through Show Low, Arizona in 1379, and an Indian wrote it down. Again, none of the archaeologists know about it, and when I show this to them, they look at it and I don't see it. Well, I do. Well, this year we had a solar eclipse that came through Show Low, Arizona, and we watched the solar eclipse at Travis's daughter's house. And then I took Travis over and we stood there in front of the petroglyph at the time that the solar eclipse was going on, April 8th, 2024. Of course, in Arizona, we only had a partial eclipse. The people in Texas up through the Chicago area got to see a total eclipse. We only got to see a partial. But it was very interesting and fun to sit here and observe the eclipse at a place where an Indian wrote down the solar eclipse. Now here's another marker that I found. And I wondered what it was. And so I saw this spire behind me. And I thought, could this spire cast a shadow onto this spiral? And I thought it was possibly an equinox. And so I set up my time-lapse camera, trying to see the spring equinox. And I was thinking that this part of the shadow would go through the spiral on the equinox. And so I set up my camera like 2 weeks ahead of time, so I knew what it was going to look like and kind of time it out. Well, this is what I got. Sure enough, that point went right through the spiral, exactly like I predicted. Unfortunately, this was March 5th, 15 days before the spring equinox. So this happened ahead of time. Well, it gave them an opportunity to know when the spring equinox was going to happen, but this is what it looks like on the equinox. This point here of the shadow goes right through the spiral. So they could have used this on the spring equinox. I also put a rock right here so that this is on the equinox too. So this would tell you. So it does work. It's just the timing is different, or the way you read it. Also in the same area, a couple of yards away, here's this triangular shaped rock. If you'll see, there's lizards on the left side and on the right side. And again, here's Ramsey going back to the car. It's kind of difficult to walk in this area, walking across the rocks. But this shows the cardinal directions. The one on the north side points south, and the one on the south side points north. And then you have these pretty much identical markers that are on the east side and the west side. So they were laying out the cardinal directions right here. Now here's a petroglyph that I found, and I think it's part of the legend of the tethered sun. Some of the ancient cultures thought that the sun either was going too fast or too slow, and they would tie some powerful man or god would tie a rope to it and either pull the sun up into the sky or slow it down. Different legends talk about it differently. But I think this is a petroglyph depicting the sun being tethered by a powerful man or god and changing the length of day. And here's a picture kind of showing the sun rays coming through the trees. And this would make them think that, hey, maybe there are invisible ropes that somebody could pull on the sun with. Now, these are petroglyphs that show a trail marker. It shows where you are and a foot showing you'll walk off in this direction. It shows where the trails are. Well, this, I think, is possibly part of the emergent story of the Hopi and the Zuni. They believed they were living in a third world underground, and Tewa, the sun god, told them if they came out of the underground world, he would give them sunlight, he'd give them warmth, he would supply energy to grow their plants, he would take care of them. And so they climbed out of what they call a sipapu, a hole in the rock in the Grand Canyon. Well, here's a petroglyph that I believe is the legend of the emergence. And here is the hole and a trail marker, but it's not a foot, it's a hand. And here is the beanstalk or vine that they climbed out of the sipapu. They climbed out, they did not walk out. Now here's another one, a natural hole in the rock, showing again the vine. And here's some footprints where they were walking away. So these are a couple of miles apart, but I think this is part of their culture, the legend of the emergence. Now, the people from Mufon may ask, what of the legend of the Hopis and Zunis? Do any petroglyphs depict star people or ant people? Do any petroglyphs depict UFO craft? Well, that's a question that Clifford Mahooty asked me. And so I took him out to try to find some petroglyphs of the ant people. And I asked him, what do ant people look like? And he says, heck, I don't know. We just call them ant people. I said, well, do they live underground or do they look like ants? Why do you call them ant people? Well, we've got a lot of petroglyphs in our area that show what I might say are ant people. They've got weird faces, they've got antennae, they've got weird arms. And I used to think they were kind of the shape of an ice cream cone. And so I used to call them ice cream cone people, but these are some of the petroglyphs. I'll let you decide what you think of them. They don't look human to me, but they may be somebody wearing costumes. Now this one's kind of interesting. They got normal skeleton-looking faces, but this guy has a sun, or his face is radiating, a bright radiating face. Some more pictures of the same individuals. In this one, the river comes up and places sand on here. So some of these are buried under the sand. You have to dig them out to be able to see some of these. But they all look very similar. And these ant people, are of extreme age. You see, they put petroglyphs over the top of them. And some of them are so faint, they've pretty well faded away, while the petroglyphs on the outside may be 1,000 years old and look brand new, and the others behind them could be 6,000, 8,000, 10,000. Who knows how old they are? Now, here's one that I thought was quite interesting. This guy has a weird face. Still got his antenna. Could these be more of the star people? Again, with the ant people. So this is a picture that Clifford gave me that showed me what he was looking for as somebody that looks more like a little gray alien than humanoid. Well, these are some of the petroglyphs that I have found that look somewhat similar to the picture that Clifford gave me. And some of them wear helmets with, again, something radiating a bright light. Here's some that looks like they're wearing helmets. Here's, again, a helmet with a star on it. This one has got a helmet with, I don't know, some little spiral. And this is a guy that he's in the Milky Way with stars, so I included him on this. He may be a star person. Now this is Quetzalcoatl. He's eating people, and you can see people lined up. If there was a UFO and they went inside of people went inside of the UFO, the ancient people would not know what a machine was or a flying UFO. And so they would think that they were being eaten by this monster, God, whatever. Now here's another Jonah and the whale in the Three Rivers area in New Mexico. Again, a guy inside the fish. Kind of the Jonah and the whale story. And again, here's the meteor or UFO traveling through the sky. In one of the meetings, I showed this, and Clifford gave me this picture. And I mentioned that I didn't know where Clifford got it from, and some guy in the audience, he raised his hand. I know where Clifford got that picture. That's mine. So that was Ron Regier. So I give him credit for this picture. Now changing gears a little, in the White Sands National Park, recently they have found some footprints, and they have research. They've been able to test some of the seeds and stuff that they were able to get a date that pushed the timeline back at least to about 23,000 years. They used to think that humans were only on the American continent 13 to 16,000 years old. Well, by following the footprints from one area where they would dig back, they found the human footprints were able to be analyzed, and they were next to extinct animals. This is a big sloth, camels, and not mastodons. What are they? Maybe they are mastodons. Anyway, they were able to date them, and it pushes the date way back in time. Well, here's some arrowheads that I found, and I've had these dated, and they say they're somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 years old. They look brand new. Well, I was out hiking and I found these arrowheads. And I got so excited when I found them. Oh, I found an arrowhead. And I pick them up and I look at them and, oh man, look how amateurish these things are. And I got disappointed. And then I turned them over. These have been sitting in the sun for so long, they've totally bleached white. These are of extreme age. I now look at them as they could stretch back to 14, 16,000 years old. But now that we know man has been here later, these could go back 18, 20, 22,000 years. Now here's another petroglyph in snowflake of an elongated skull. There are, in Paracas, Peru, there are some elongated skulls. And down here is the pre-Inca and an Egyptian bust. This is a long ways from Snowflake, Arizona, but here is a petroglyph showing an elongated skull. How did they know about the elongated skulls? Now, these are some of the interesting ones that I've found. I called them D-men because you've got the left hand on your hip, the right hand up in the air, and is what I asked Clifford if he knew what these were. He said, well, sure. Your left hand goes on your hip holding your medicine bag. The right hand goes up in the air spreading corn pollen. Well, here's a picture of Clifford with his left hand on his medicine bag and his right hand, he's spreading some corn pollen. He's giving a ceremony. We do have a lot of scarlet macaws in the petroglyphs. Here's 3 different versions, one with 1 feather, 2 tail feathers, 2 tail feathers, and 3 tail feathers. Is there anything that ties the Chinese to the Americas? Well, Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan Codex depicts a serpent that would devour people. The Chinese dragon looks like a serpent, only it has legs, little short legs. Could they be similar legends that have changed slightly? One with legs and one without? Well, here's some petroglyphs in snowflake showing a snake, in this case, a rattlesnake. He's got little tiny short arms. He looks more like the Chinese dragon than he does the Quetzalcoatl of the Aztecs. And you see the ant people too. Now this is outside of Holbrook. Here's 3 more of them. You see the rattles for the rattlesnake and little tiny short arms. Here's the rattles, the little short arms. And this guy over here has rattles and little short arms. Well, John helped me out a little bit. He had been up to Rochester Creek, and we also knew about Whitehorse. These are look more like a Chinese dragon with little short arms. So maybe here's some pottery. The same thing, the Quetzalcoatl with little short arms and legs in their pottery. Well, here's a petroglyph that is in a museum in China. Very beautiful, nicely made. An archer crouching down. Well, here are the petroglyphs in snowflake. Very, very similar. Could there have been somebody that knew about these, or is this just accidental? It's not proof of anything, but it is very interesting that they are so identical. You see the elbow as he pulls back the bow in all of these, crouching down. Now this is the Chinese word bell. And I think this is probably the bell that the word came from. It has a place to hang it up, the sides of the bell, maybe a clapper to ring the bell with. This is not a picture of a bell. This is the Chinese word bell. Well, here it is in Snowflake, Arizona. It's very similar, the place to hang it up, the sides of the bell, the clapper, and a guy that's upside down. Well, the Chinese ring bells for funerals. The Indians had no metal. They would have not known what a bell even was. I think this is Chinese. Here is basically the same thing over by New Mexico. People used to tell me this was a UFO, but I've said, no, this is a bell, a place to hang it up, the sides of the bell, the clapper, the guy upside down who's dead, a bird to carry the spirit to the afterlife, and a little kachina. I think these were Chinese, not Indian. Right next to that word bell is this. John sent this over to the universities in China, and they came back and says, yes, this is Chinese. It's the Huan River. Very similar. I said it couldn't be anything else. This is a river on the side, and what this actually is, I'm not sure, but whatever it is, it means the Huan River in China. Now here's a petroglyph. This is chu. It means to go out. Look how identical it is. There didn't come close. They're basically identical. Little variations here, but that's just different scribes drawing it differently. Here's basically the same thing with a square on it, meaning a mouth. And here it is in the petroglyphs. The mouth says, I'm telling you to go out, exit. And in a modern day, this basically is the word, only they use mountain, meaning go over the mountain, go far away. But it's basically the same. It's just they've changed the to go out to meaning mountain. And some of these are a little difficult to get to. I had fun getting to some of these. Now here is 3 Chinese words. Zhang, meaning middle. Tian, like Tiananmen Square, means a city block or a subdivided field. And down here is a large tree, Wei. Possibly the tree of life, I don't know. But Zhang, even today, this is the modern day word China. When they made their maps, they always put China in the middle. So this means middle. So it is the word China today. Now this is Zhu. It's 2 hands cupped together. You cupped your fingers together. It means to join. Well, air is a line above and a line below. It means joining heaven and earth. 3,000-year-old Chinese symbol. And this is right next to these. Now, this is up in Winslow. And again, you see the sun, Ra. So you know what the sun is. There's a circle with a dot in it. This means the horizon. So the sun is above the horizon. That means early, not morning. It means early or early morning. And here it is in Winslow, in the Hammurabi ruins. Again, how similar? Almost identical. A little, everybody's handwriting's a little bit different. Twin birds, meaning friend. The Chinese used it, and they're all over here. Did the Chinese tell the Indians how to make the word friend, or did the Indians teach the Chinese? But evidently they're both using the same symbols, twin birds meaning friendship. Now this is salt. The word lu, they would pour salt water in a little pond, and as the water evaporated, it would leave the salt. So this is the word salt, meaning evaporation ponds. And here they are in New Mexico and in Snowflake. Kun, the word difficult. Again, they were kind of, they made a man-looking thing. He's got legs, but there's no feet. He's got arms, but those aren't really hands. This isn't a depiction of a man. This is a depiction of a map, meaning we traveled from here over to here, and it was a difficult journey. Supreme God in Springerville. Very similar. The differences might be just between one person and another. The line on top is horizontal in the Chinese, but in the petroglyph, it's vertical. Basically identical in meaning. Fee, not. Wu, shaman. Now here, every one of these is the word boat. Here on the left is a river with a boat in the middle of the river. These are probably the ribs of the boat, but all of these are the word boat. And you can see how different scribes couldn't read each other's writing because they're so different. Well, here is the word fee. This is the Chinese word. And here it is in Snowflake. Basically identical. Over a wavy line, meaning water. Well, there's no water in Snowflake to be bragging about. There's no oceans, there's no lakes, there's no Mississippi rivers. How would they know to put a boat over water in Snowflake? Again, I think it's a Chinaman saying, hey, we came across the ocean. This is how we got here. Is there a connection between the Aztecs of Mesoamerica and the Anasazi of the American Southwest? The Aztecs themselves claim they came from the mountains to the north. Could they have come from the American Southwest? From Casa Malapais, Chaco, Mesa Verde, southern Utah? Is there any evidence? Well, the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, the Aztec god. Well, here is Quetzalcoatl in the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico. He's more of a sea serpent looking guy. Well, here it is in a petroglyph close to Holbrook. Again, an up and down sea serpent looking snake. Now here is a stone carving that was in the Hooper Pueblo. You can see the head, and it was probably buried to about right here. And then there was a second half, so there'd be two humps. Roxanne Knight used to play on this when she was a young girl living on that ranch. Well, her dad sold them or gave them to somebody living in Springerville, and he put it up on the streets in Springerville in the 1960s. Well, people started complaining about it. It didn't look like something they wanted on their streets. And so they made them take it down. And when they did, they ended up breaking it in half. And so it disappeared for years. And John Rushcamp went to Springerville and he said, you know, this Quetzalcoatl has got to be here somewhere. And they said, well, you can go back in our store shed and look around if you want. So he went back in their storeroom, and under some bags of cement, he found this. And he made them get it out and put it up in the museum. You can see there's a taco looking thing right here that they could have put flowers or something as a sacrifice. I enhanced the eyes and nose a little bit and the mouth so you can see it. But this is in the Springerville Museum today. It's only about 1.5 feet tall, and it's all that's left of the Quetzalcoatl from the Hooper Ranch. Okay. Is there a connection between the Aztecs of Mesoamerica, the Anasazi of the American Southwest? I would have to say so. There is more to history than is being taught. There is more mysteries yet to be discovered. Keep your eyes and your mind open. To be continued. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Fantastic. That was so fantastic. I'm really glad I got to see the whole thing this time. And I think you've added quite a bit more to it.
Yes.
It's really interesting. So we have people from all over, some from Pennsylvania, some from Arizona, and some from the Midwest. Bill is joining us, and Fred was with us too. I don't know if he's still with us. He's also in the Midwest. So we have time for questions. If you want to ask any to Richard, please feel free to. And I'm going to start off with the first one.
Okay.
There were, I think you explained that it was salt. It was a square with many blocks. There were many parts of different petroglyphs we were looking at where there were a series of blocks together, and they had lots of divided lines to it, not all that looked like the salt symbol. I was just wondering if you knew what they were.
Well, again, 3,000 years ago, they were just learning how to write. And not everybody did the same things.
Right.
And so
I remember there was one in your thing where the guy had a drum and he was drumming, and it was where Venus had moved, to line up with Jupiter. I thought that was fascinating.
Right.
Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you, but do we have other questions from the floor? If we do, please unmute yourself and ask away.
Sure. Hey,
Have
Richard.
you published any books on this?
Yes.
So was that Bill asking or Vito?
Vito.
Oh, Vito, you unmuted yourself. Very good. So you have a question.
Yes, I want to know if Richard has books published on this subject.
John Rushkamp has published the book on the Chinese. I do a shotgun blast since John is strictly Chinese. I go into everything else from the solar markers to the stars to you name it. It's culture, it's history, it's everything. So yes, John has a book out, and I made a chart of 104 the best examples of the petroglyphs matching a Chinese symbol. And you can go on his website and print it out. So you'll have your own copy of it.
He mentioned that in the middle of the presentation, Vito. So, but he could email it to you too. I think you have sent it to me. I may even have it. I can forward it. But if afterwards you email me, I'll be happy to put you in touch directly with Richard, and Richard can send you that printout, which you could print and then go petroglyph looking yourself, because we do have some right up there in where Vito is. He's in Cottonwood.
Yeah.
So we have
yeah.
something called V bar V. Sorry,
Yeah.
V bar V. Or is
They've
it
changed the name. I don't remember what the changed name is, but
right?
it's no longer V bar V.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a whole wall of beautiful petroglyphs there, and they've actually built a nice bench you can sit on, or a bench, so it's quite
Well, this
nice.
is an ongoing project. I mean, it's not a once and you're done. We're adding things all the time, new discoveries, new understanding. I keep going back through my old petroglyph pictures and see things that I have overlooked. And I found some very major discoveries. The one with the wavy line and the spiral with the coyote. That was one that I had gone back through my old pictures. And when I saw it, why didn't I see this a long time ago? I mean, it was so obvious. But no, as your knowledge grows, you find things that you totally went over your head before.
I thought that was an excellent evaluation too, of them hooting and then howling. I thought
Yes.
that was really, really great. I live with coyotes right here, and they wake me up all the time in the middle of the night, especially when they have a kill. It's like, oh my
Right.
goodness. You think a child is being killed in the backyard, but it's just the coyotes, going after a rabbit or something.
Yeah, they can really serenade you at times. That's
Yes,
for
they
sure.
can. Yes, they can. So do we have more comments or questions from the floor at all?
Can jump in now. Hey,
Please
Richard,
do.
great presentation. Thanks so much. Had a question, and the answer could be who could really say. But with regards to the ant people, do you
Yes.
think that the antenna were intended as a literal interpretation or as representational? And they didn't actually have antenna. It's just to show that they were the ant people.
The only one that could answer that is the artists themselves.
Mhm.
I mean, we can put our biases on it and say, well, today we think they're antenna because in our world today they're antenna. But insects had antenna, so possibly the Indians could have thought they were, feelers, or that's what ants have antenna.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what
or
I'm
feelers.
saying. Did
So,
they actually? Yeah.
well, if they're an ant person, again, I asked Clifford, what does an ant person look like? And heck, I don't know. We just call them ant people. Do they live underground or do they resemble an ant? He had no idea. He's never seen one. So again, for us to try to put our biases on what we're seeing, we can't know what's inside somebody's head 1,000, 6,000, 8,000 years ago. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had a same question similarly on the ant people. There are many legends that people lived underground and then came back to the surface.
right.
that's covered in Robert Schoch's work, who's written for Forgotten Knowledge, I think it's called. But I'm wondering, do you know what the time period was when they came back from being underground to being on the surface?
No, there's no way to date it. The only way I can put a date on some of the Chinese symbols is I know what era they came from. And the way the writing system was, date that era, which would date the petroglyph. Now,
Right.
in India, I think it is, there are caves or whatever that they thought that people carved rooms inside of the mountain, and they lived underground because there was radioactivity or a sun flare or something that was hostile that they could not live on the surface, and they had to live underground for a while. If we
Right.
went through solar storms,
Right.
the surface of the earth could be hostile. So there's other places in the world where the people think, well, they have evidence of cave, or not caves, but mine shafts that they lived underground.
Mhm. Yes, there's evidence of that in Pennsylvania. I used to know it was a Native American who spoke about that right in the Pennsylvania area. In fact, right in the King of Prussia area, there is an entrance to a big cave, which this Native American was a marshal within his tribe. And he said there is legend that we know about where people, lived in the caves or would go into the caves for protection. And there's a magnificent area any of you can look up in Turkey called Cappadocia, and that's where they dug down within soft limestone a good 26 layers. It's almost like a apartment building. It's
Right.
huge underground, and it has amazing
Right.
air shafts in it and things like that. It's I went on there with Robert Schoch on a trip to Turkey when we went to Göbekli Tepe, and it was just stunning. You also kind of felt like you were in like a Harry Potter movie or a
Right.
not even Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. I mean, it kind of reminded you of something from a movie set. You couldn't
Right.
quite believe as you were walking through it, these levels that you kind of went down and spiraled around in different rooms, and you could crawl from one room back up to another room, but they were like rooms stacked on top of each other with hallways between them. You couldn't even tell, okay, did one family live here or did one family live
Oh,
here?
yeah. Some of them were big enough they thought thousands of people were living
Yes.
in. But it's
Yes.
very interesting that the Hopi and Zuni legends are very similar to the European, Middle Eastern, India,
And Vedic.
people living underground. Very similar legends.
Yeah. And Robert thinks it could well be that there was some kind of cataclysmic event around 10,000 years ago, or,
Mhm.
11 to 8,000 years ago, right around the time of the Younger Dryas. There could have been major solar flares. In fact, many of you may know, we just had some quite significant solar flares that lit up literally the southern hemisphere with aurora borealis in the night sky. That was May. It was, well, Travis and I were speaking at a conference. That was May 9th, 10th, and 11th. That weekend, we had major solar flares, larger than we've ever had, hit the United States. Thankfully, it didn't melt anything. We didn't have any, power stations go down or anything like
No, it
that.
didn't knock out my computer, but I did my some of my electronic equipment got fried and I had to replace them.
Ah, really? With the solar storm?
Yeah, I had what is it, Amazon Fire, and it burned out, and I had to replace it.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Well, I don't want to keep Richard longer than we need him. It's always a pleasure to see everyone online, but if no one else has any other questions, then I will probably.
Bambi has her hand up.
Oh, her hand up. Thank you for telling me, Bill. I didn't see her hand. She would have unmuted herself anyway. It popped up.
Hi there. I was just wondering, there's been this pushback from whom you would call mainstream archaeologists, and you've mentioned it so many times that your discoveries have really outmeasured them. I'm wondering how you see this playing out. Continued resistance from the mainstream that you on your own are feeling quite independent, sort of what I know, and you can't fool me. And so I'd like you to just explain a little bit more.
Well, for years, when I would say that we've been finding Chinese in the petroglyphs, people would roll their eyes and turn their back. But now they cannot tell us that we're wrong. They may not want to actually come out and throw their support, but we've got so much evidence that they cannot say you're wrong. So, yeah, John has a page out of bibliography or whatever of the Chinese professors in Chinese universities and all kinds of professors that have looked at this. And the Chinese themselves have no problem with it. They can actually read it. They don't need somebody to explain it to them. They can read it for themselves. Now, us, no, we got to have somebody explain it to us. But the Chinese don't. They're actually teaching this in their schools. And John, well, I have a copy of, what do you call it? Not a bibliography, just excerpts of people giving their opinion and their name. So I've got a page that I can show you.
I think you once sent me a video of a Chinese researcher also coming here.
Oh,
And
yes.
he was actually speaking in Chinese in the video, but there were English subtitles on the bottom. And he was pointing out the petroglyphs and saying, these are Chinese, and the ancient Chinese were here. Now, there's another way we know the Chinese were here as well. And I'm pretty sure this relates to grain and rice. I believe the Chinese brought black rice with them from China and cross-pollinated it and gave it to the American Indians. And we now know it as Indian rice, but I believe originally it's identical to the grain that came from China, and it wasn't naturally here. And I believe that's another way you can trace back the cultural overlaps there.
Well, there's a lot of, we're just focusing in on the petroglyphs.
Petroglyphs.
But in Peru, they have chicken bones that are 3,000 years old. There are people in, I think it's Peru, that has a genetic defect that's only in the Japanese population. And they've tested some of the mummies, and they have that genetic defect that's only in Japanese people. The Zunis have cusps on their teeth that match Chinese or Japanese. So there are genetic links. There's animals and plants. Chickens was one. Corn went the other way, went over to China. There's pictures in India in some of their temples that look like they have corn, which come from around Mexico City. So there's plants and animals that go both ways. The Chinese themselves in their legends talk about birds that can fly backwards. Well, what birds can fly backwards?
The hummingbird.
Hummingbird. It's only in the Americas and actually the West Coast. I don't think you have hummingbirds on the East Coast.
Oh yeah, we do.
And there's there's, far more, but, I'm focused in on the petroglyphs, which are something that you can actually physically look at. And so anyway, there's far more to research. Keep your eyes and your mind open.
I think there is also ancient Chinese records in very early dynasties of trips that were here in like the 800s and the 900s, were big, huge ships with lots of rigging and lots of people on board them went off to do trading and discovery of the world.
Okay.
And they apparently got to the coast of California and South America. According to their legends. I don't think they called it, of course, the United States or America at that point, but there
one
is
of the things that I left out is I think that the emperor of China had a son or a great general that they needed to get experience. They either had to go to war or go on an expedition. So the Chinese expeditions that came over here were not here to conquer. They were not here to immigrate. They were only here to explore, and they had a life back in China that they had to get back to. And so they didn't leave any, people or whatever. They came, looked, and left, went back to their home. So, that's part of the things that people bring up that, well, why isn't there more evidence? Well, they weren't here to conquer they were here only as an expedition to explore. They had a life back in China to return to.
fascinating, really fascinating. Well, I guess if we don't have more further questions from the floor, we should be willing to let Richard go for this evening.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it, and
it was fantastic. I really appreciate the presentation. Well, good night to everyone. Enjoy, and we will talk soon again.